Hello everyone, we are from the Sudoku game group, which consists of me, Mahesa, Farrell, Djayaputra, Ashely, Galvan, Yomi, and Andrew. And today we would like to present our Sudoku game that we've created using Python. We are tasked to understand and learn the basics of coding by making a project. Python, known for its simple and understandable logic, can be applied in different occasions, meaning anyone can create anything using Python as it's considered a high-level programming language, as it's also close to human language. So, our group decided to create a Soduku game as our project. Soduku is a logical puzzle game where someone fills a 9x9 grid until each row or column contains a number of 1 to 9 without any repetition. So for this project/game, there will be levels where users are able to try different levels. We chose this specific project because of how familiar the game mechanics are to us, as we also enjoy playing this game. Additionally, Sudoku requires many programming constructs to be implemented, such as arrays and loops, which is said to be the focus in our project.
There are 4 main objectives that are taken into account in the making of our group project, which is the Sudoku game. The first one is to explore the implementation of the loop function in Python into making our game. The second one is the implementation of the array function. The third one is to determine the specific loops and array function that are used and its connection into making the game. And the fourth one is to explore the usage of subprogram and how it could be made to add more features into the existing game.
Okay, so when you run the code, this is what you're greeted with, and this is basically the main display of the Sudoku game. And in the main display, it is shown 3 levels, which is level 1, level 2, and level 3. And each of the level has different difficulties, where in level 1, the difficulty for level 1 is easy, and then in level 2 is medium, and then in level 3 is hard. And when you press the level, you can always go back to the main display by clicking the menu on the right corner, at the bottom right corner of the display, like this. And in each of the level, you are provided with 3 lives, and every time you misinput a number, like this for example, you automatically ran out of 1 life, and once you ran out of 3 life, you automatically failed the game and you have to restart the level that you were currently on. There's also a timer on the left bottom corner of the display to show how long the player has been playing for. And this is, I'm gonna show you what will happen if you actually finish or beat the game. So when you finish a level, you will be greeted with a level success. And that's basically all for the Sudoku project.
First, we need to import two things, which is the timer, which is another file for the subprogram timer that we created, and Pygame itself. And for Pygame, we need to initialize two things, which is the fonts and the other functions of Pygame. Here we set up the fonts that are going to be used in the code later, which will be used in the main menu and the levels itself. Here we set up the grid for the Sudoku itself, which is a 2D array that we use. Then it will be updated as the game goes on and is being changed by the player inputs. And we also have an array, 2D array called grid flag. The grid flag is the thing that checks if the player can change the grid, the number in the grid itself or not. Which is, the player cannot change it if it's being preset by the level itself, and we check it here. Here it's being set for the level, right? And if in the level the grid is not equal to 0 from the grid array, it will change the grid flag value in that index into 1. So if the grid flag value is equal to 1, then the player will not be able to change it at all. Okay, now the next thing is the variables. Here are the variables that we use. Especially this one and this one. The level variable, if level equals to 0, it means it's main menu, and level 1 and 2 and 3 corresponds to each level itself. And lives, if life is equal to 0, then the game will be over for the player. X and Y will be the coordinate. And here are just constants we're going to use, including color constants and screen width, screen height, square size. Here are the variables that we use inside this file for the timer, which will be called in the timer subprogram later. Here we initialize the screen to be having screen width and screen height of the constant that we preset earlier. And the timer event, we need to create a new ID for the timer event itself, which is done by doing this. And every 1000 seconds, the ID of timer event will be set into true, and the Pygame will check which event is being run at that moment every time, right? And timer event will be the moment that it's being run every 1000 milliseconds or every 1 second. We'll elaborate into this later in the while loop. Here's the draw function for the player to draw function does anything to display so that the player can see everything that is being displayed. First, in level 0 or in the main menu, there are 3 buttons and 1 title. This is for the title, and this is for the buttons. The button has additional functionality, which is hover function. If hover is equal to true, the color will be changed of the button will be changed from white into cyan. Same thing for the level 2 button and level 3 button in the main menu. And this is the menu button inside the level itself. Same functionality as the buttons in the main menu, but just different display. But the way it works is the same. If hover menu is true, then it will change the properties of the button itself. And here, we iterate every time the while loop is being run in the game. It will check if there's any updates being made to the player, right? Which is in the grid especially. This display will update the grid every time the draw function is being called in the while loop. So if the grid, for example, is being changed right here into, let's say, 1, this draw function was responsible for displaying 1 and changing the background color. This is for drawing the grid itself, like the lines here. What this does is every time it's a multiple of 3, the thickness of the grid will be thicker. So, for example, here. And this is for displaying the level at the bottom here. And this is for highlighting the last press square. So if we press, it will be highlighted. This thing does it for our program. It's just changing the grid colors, basically. And this thing displays the remaining lives, which is being displayed here. First, placing the hearts. And if we lose one heart, you'll only display 2 of the heart. That's why we are displaying it using this function using this for I and range lives. So if there's only 2 lives, there will be only 2 heart being displayed. If there's only 1 life, there will only be 1 heart being displayed and stuff. And this is to display the congratulations message if the player successfully fills all of the grids. And now I move on to another function, which is get coordinate. This is just a simple function that converts the coordinate position in terms of pixel to in terms of 1 until 9, which is just the grids here. And this makes it easier for us to code. And check validity. See, for example, in check validity, we're using the coordinates. And it makes it so much simpler because we can make it in range of 9. This is checking the vertical over the column if there's any similar numbers. If there's any similar numbers being found by the one that the player is inputting, the life will be reduced by 1. And it will create a display where it shows like red lines all around the which is being done by this. Same thing here, but this is for the rows instead of the column. It works the same way, but now we're using the Y. And now this checks within each square here if there's any similar. So for example, we cannot put let's say 2 here because there's another 2 here, right? Or yeah, it will reduce our life again. And this is the main part of the program itself, the while loop. First we fill the screen with white and we call the draw function every time the while loop is being run. And this is what we call event handling, the one we referred to earlier a bit back then for the timer event. For event in pygame.event, this thing just checks what event is being run at that moment in pygame in our Sudoku game. If event type is quit, the run will be false, the run variable, and we will quit the game. The quit button is this cross right here. It will close the game basically. And if it's mouse button down, there are many possible different scenarios, right? For example, in the main menu, the mouse button down position will be the buttons for the level itself, and it will initialize the level accordingly. Here's what it does. It will also reset the timer every time we enter the level, which is what we need. And this thing handles the mouse process in the game itself, which is just calling the get coordinate function in each level. And if the mouse button down is within the menu button, it will take us back to the main menu, which is let's level equal to 0. And this thing is just this allows us to navigate through the game using the arrow keys. And this thing deletes the number if we input 0 or we input backspace. And this thing just updates the number that's being inputted by the player if it's valid, which is why we call it valid equals check validity. And if it's true, if it's possible for the player to input a number, we'll update the grid using the number that's inputted by the player. Here it will check if number is inputted as 1, number is inputted as 3, 4, and 5, and so on. Okay, here the grid flag if it's equal to 1, the player will not be able to change the value. Here's the output for the level failed if player life variable is less than or equal to 0. And this thing resets the lives every time we go back to the main menu, so that if we enter another level, the life will be back into 3. And this thing, if level is not equal to 0, the timer will be displayed, because we don't want to display the timer if we're in the main menu, right? That's why we're doing this right here. And this thing also checks if the player have successfully finished the game, which is filling all the grids, or not yet, which is done by this function. We check for each columns and row. If all the grid is equal to 0, the success will be turned to false because the player has not finished the game yet. But so first we initialize the success as true, right? If it's not being changed to false here, that means the player has already filled all the grids. And yeah, the player will receive the congratulations display message. And this thing just update the display every time the while loop is being run. After the draw function is being called, we still need to update it using this function. And if we exit the while loop, which is run equal to false, that we mentioned earlier, when the player press the X button, it will quit the pygame itself. That's why it closes, program entry closes. Okay. And that's it for the code explanation. Thank you. And the next part of the code is the timer file. This file has two functions, which is the timer update, which functions to update the timer every second, and timer display, which function is to display the timer. Okay, so first we need to import Sudoku project because this is the project that we want to update the timer variables in. So every time timer update is being called, the timer second will be increased by 1, and if it just reaches 60, it will be reset to 0, and timer minute will be increased by 1. Same with timer minute. If timer minute has reached 60, the timer hour will be increased by 1, and timer minute goes back to 0. And the timer display is just responsible for displaying the timer. Here there are many if statements because I want the timer to look as good as possible. If the timer only has one digit, it will include the 0 in front of the number. And if the timer has two digits, for example, like the minute is 10 or more, we'll remove the 0. Same thing for the second and the hour. That's why it's like this. And this is just to adjust the color for every level and initializing the timer display itself. And here the screen width is just for displaying the timer display, which we set here. So, and this is the coordinate position. Okay, yeah, that's it. And timer update is being called here. If event type is timer update, if event time is timer event, then it will call timer.timer update. There is timer here because we are calling from another file. And that's it.
For the conclusion, we were able to explore how arrays can be implemented in creating a Sudoku games. Arrays, particularly two-dimensional arrays, served the foundation for storing 9x9 grid of numbers in the Sudoku game. We were actually also able to explore how loops can be implemented in creating a Sudoku game. Loops played a crucial role in iterating over the rows, columns, and the subgrid of the Sudoku board. We were actually also able to determine the use of loops and arrays in coding a Sudoku game and how they were connected. The use of loops and arrays was connected in the coding of a Sudoku game. For example, when assigning the values of a two-dimensional array and a nested loop was employed, the outer loop iterated over the rows while the inner loop iterated over the column. We were actually also able to determine how a subprogram can be implemented in coding the Sudoku game. The use of subprograms was implemented to add a timer feature to the game. Here we created a separate file that contains all the necessary code for the time. With this, we thank you.